Hello everybody. In this video, I'll talk about the retail and generalist segments of the investor community. But first, let me start with a short bit of my background to put some context around what I'll be sharing with you. I was a buy-side analyst in New York City for almost 20 years at two large natural resource investment funds. And at our peaks, we had billions of dollars under management. I've met hundreds of different management teams and over thousands of marketing meetings. And I've also stayed very engaged with the retail and the generalist segments of the market. My experiences have taught me how the different classes of investors think and what they need to hear in their investment processes. Because I've been around the industry for such a long time, I can also tell you that the investor pool is changing, and it's changing at a pretty quick pace. Many of you are noticing it too. There's a large and growing segment of the investment community with a relative lack of investment and industry understanding of natural resources. Issues like index investing, the loss of specialist funds, and the movement of traditional retail markets to other market sectors have created a growing need to talk to the remaining pool of investors in a certain way. And at Green Room Consultants, we're here to help you do that. If you have a couple minutes also, please take a look at some of the other videos I've been putting up, and hopefully they'll give you some insight into other areas of the investment community. Okay, so let's talk about the retail and the generalist funds. Currently, negative sentiment towards natural resources from these investors, it's widespread and it's been in place for a long time. Reversing the sentiment is going to take some extra effort, and you shouldn't just hope that commodity prices will bail out your stock price, because we all know that hope isn't a plan. When sectors are unloved for extended time periods, they typically rebound as big investors start buying in the big cap space. However, very, very few of these investors can or will venture down the market cap spectrum to where so many companies currently are. Among other things, they simply can't deal with ownership restrictions or liquidity issues. And you can take a look at one of my other videos on the institutional investors if you want some more insight into their world. The reality for most management teams is that for the time being, you need to keep talking to retail and the smaller funds, because the current market caps, they're realistically the only ones, along with private equity, who can buy your stock. Therefore, you want to understand them and know how to talk to them. Now, it may seem simplistic, but the easiest way to understand the generalist or retail investor is to simply do a quick role reversal. Think of your feelings about your own investments over which you have no daily insight or control. In comparison, your feelings towards your company are completely different because you're immersed in the day-to-day activities of what's going on. You can see and understand the progress towards your company's goals because you're an integral part of that progress. But if you're the public, your perspective is obviously much different. You have no idea of the day-to-day progress. Frankly, if you did, you wouldn't understand it because of the technical nature of much of the subject matter anyway. But most days, there's silence from the company. Now, if the markets are going up, this massive difference in perspective, it really doesn't make a difference. However, in conditions of market weakness, the situation changes drastically. The reality is that when confronted with a lack of news and a falling share price, the overwhelming number of investors will assume the worst rather than assume the best. In my experience, the investor herd mentality is even more significant during times of weakness, and it's much harder to reverse. The mentality is intensified with an investor base that lacks a good understanding of what it actually owns, and unfortunately, this has been a growing trait in the natural resource investor community. A lack of specific knowledge and historical context makes investors very vulnerable to negative news flow from other areas, even when that news flow is not directly applicable to their own investments. So, how do you talk with a crowd like this? A clear and simple value proposition is the keystone to communication with the retail market and the generalist portfolio managers. Heaping on technical detail about your projects or operations isn't the answer. There's a limit to the amount of technical knowledge that you can impart and a limit to the amount the overwhelming majority of these investors can absorb, especially when attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. You must condition yourself to provide information and education that's targeted at all aspects of the investor's decision-making process. Telling your story in a certain way and within an investor's attention span requires more effort on your part, but the benefits of doing this correctly are tremendous. Presentation of a clear value proposition and progress towards the final investment goal will always strengthen investors' trust in management. And as in any relationship, trust is critical and is one of the few things that will make people assume the best rather than assume the worst. From a practical standpoint, this creates buyers on weakness rather than sellers on weakness. Now, with smaller cap companies, the marginal buying and selling by retail and small generalist funds, often on lower volumes, can set the price for subsequent capital raises. Think of the positive effect on dilution you can create by keeping those investors informed and focused on your value proposition. You don't want them focused on news that has absolutely nothing to do with their investment in your company. The payback on your efforts to keep those investors focused on your value proposition and the end game can literally be worth a fortune as additional capital raises take place. Now, you shouldn't be surprised that generalist and retail investors will need more of your marketing efforts. You may be surprised, however, at how much you must actually spoon feed them. The most successful marketers are those that anticipate the most important investor questions and objections and know how to answer them. And that's where we can really help you. So to sum up, here's my green room value proposition. It takes a buy-side investor to understand what a buy-side investor needs and wants to hear. And I was that buy-side investor for many years. I can work with your company seamlessly at a very modest cost and make your marketing efforts and messaging really resonate with today's active investors. There's no reason to limit the size of the capital pool you're addressing. I can help you talk with everyone in it. I'd love to explain more, so please reach out to me at the Green Room at 212-634-7881. Ask for Steve, and we'll have a great discussion. Thanks for your time.